All right, today we have the pleasure of speaking with Scott Morris, a seasoned HR executive entrepreneur and thought leader with more than 25 years of experience transforming workplaces. He's the founder and CEO of Propulsion AI, a cutting edge HR company revolutionizing hiring and engagement through AI driven solutions. Before launching Propulsion AI, Scott held top HR positions in leadership roles at Table, Microtechnologies, and Singularity University, as well as major universities like Georgia Tech, Go Jackets, and University of Colorado Boulder. From his earliest days in law enforcement to leading workplace innovation, Scott brings us a unique perspective on the future of AI in HR. So good to have you with us, Scott.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've looked forward to being with you guys, so I'm excited for the conversation.
So, how long you been in Colorado?
Ooh, gosh, like 10
Because
years.
you were in Georgia, I mean, you'd had to be, right? Georgia Tech.
Yeah. I've been in LA, in New York, in Atlanta, and then here in Colorado. And Colorado's going to be hard to leave if we ever even considered that. It's just one of the greatest places in the world.
I've driven through a couple of times, and snow in the spring, and it's an incredible place just to look at and be. So very cool.
We get 300 days of sunshine here, so even when we have snow, at least if you're not in the mountains, it melts out pretty quickly and just gets being back to where you've got the snow and you feel the seasons, but it's not as inconvenient as living some of the snowy places that I've lived.
So Warren and I are Georgia boys. That's
Yeah, and I live just outside of Atlanta, just west of Atlanta right now. So,
I lived in Midtown when I was there, about 5 minutes from where Georgia Tech's campus is, and so great experience. Love Georgia. Another truly great place in the country.
so I'm currently in Richmond, Virginia, but Warren and I, brothers, and we get to talking about AI. We've been enjoying doing this and interviewing people like you, so it's been awesome.
I think it was a great conversation. I was really happy to have it. You guys asked some great questions, and yeah, it's such a changing landscape that these conversations are, I think, really important and necessary.
To meet you. Um,
It's it's been a little bit of an odyssey, huh?
sometimes technology is, an odyssey.
That is.
I mean, I guess that's what we're talking about is the Odyssey. So Propulsion AI, I was looking at this, pretty good tool that you've put together. Pretty good. Is it a web app or what is it really?
It's a web-based application. Did you? I didn't see in any of the logs. Did you get in and try it?
I did not get in and try Propulsion AI. I was curious when we looked at it because I actually have been hiring a lot lately, and so I I'm looking forward to this conversation. Well, like, what tips can I get? Um, and so no, I haven't looked at the interface personally. Um,
Let me tell you guys one thing that I think makes the platform really different. It's not a hiring automation. Here's here's the thing that I've discovered over 25 years in the profession. Managers who will take the time to sit down and truly think about how a role fits into their organization. And by that, what I mean is, what's the fit to strategy? What are the outcomes that you need to ask somebody to produce when you put them into that role? What's the end, not the means? How are you going to define and measure success? What kind of competencies and skills do you need? Managers who take the time to think through those things, they become talent magnets. They move toward being transformational leaders. They're the ones that everybody wants to work for because they understand the fit between that role and the organization itself. They understand the learning and growth path that they're going to take the individual that they put into that role on. And the opposite of that is true too, by the way. Managers who can't be bothered to sit down have much longer interview times because they're trying to figure out what they're looking for in the interviews. And they have much higher turnover because what they thought that they needed wasn't really what they needed. So the person they hired doesn't really fit the role. So what we built is an intelligent bot. She is a digital human. We call her Athena. And the greatest value that she delivers is that she's going to interview you about the role that you want to hire. She's going to catalyze your thinking. She's going to draw out of you the ideas about how that role fits strategy, what kind of outcomes, what kind of success measures, et cetera. And then because she's digital, rather than being a human who has to process in sequence, she can process in parallel. So when the interview's over, you have a performance-based job description, an SEO optimized job posting, social media content, interviewer guides. She'll even do compensation analysis on base salary to make sure that you're equitable for the geography and the responsibilities.
So interviewer guides. So let me ask you about this, because knowing when an interview is effective can be tricky, right? Sometimes you don't know if the interview questions you're asking are helping you get to the job skills that you want. So how does it determine that? Is it based on your experience and training data, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. The setup in an interview is everything. First of all, you have to start with a detailed spec. Where interviews go wrong is where you don't have an objective standard. And so if you start, and what Athena is helping you create is that objective standard. If you start there, it gets a whole lot easier. The second problem that generally plagues most interviews is about structure. And so what we're setting up for, and the kind of content that Athena generates allows you to take a different approach to interviews. With sort of new style, what you're able to do is say, okay, we're going to break up into groups. Group one, you guys are going to focus on technical knowledge and skills. Here's what we're looking for. Here are the questions I want you to ask. Go. Group two, you guys are going to focus on behaviors and competencies. Again, here's what we're looking for. Here's some questions. Go. Group three, you're going to focus on the relationship between what they've done in their past, basically their resume experience, and the outcomes that we need them to produce in the future. And then when you get everybody back together, the two things, as I've guided managers over 25 years, I hear two things that really are problematic. One is we get everybody back together and you say, what did you think? That's a horrible question, right? Because it's not a specific sort of targeted focus on how does this candidate measure up to the objective standard. And the second is, how'd you like them? That's such an open and laden with bias kind of question, right? What you want to ask is, for each of these standards, how do they compare to the objective standard? The worst thing you do after an interview is you compare candidate to candidate, because that introduces a ton of bias into the system. The best thing you do is say, how did that candidate match the objective standard? That's how you wind up picking better people for the roles. First thing is, know what you're looking for. Second thing is, measure everybody against that same standard.
Huh. So what's interesting, what I'm hearing is, in a real sense, and this actually goes to the root of one of the questions I had for you. So in a real sense, it sounds like you're saying that there are areas of hiring and recruitment where AI would perform better than a human adjudicator, just due to the fact that it can be less biased. Now, AI has bias, and we're aware of that, but you're saying that it can perform an evaluation on objective standard perhaps better than the questions you threw out. What do you think? How'd you feel?
Well, except that I'm not talking, though, about having AI. I mean, I think the answer to your question is yes, at least in my opinion. I think, appropriately trained, appropriately created artificial intelligence is going to do a better job of objectively reviewing than humans are. Because as humans, we worry about the bias that AI has. We fail to recognize the bias that a lot of us introduce into the process. However, what I was describing to you about interviews, that's all human run. That the process is improved because Athena, at least if you use our platform, the process is improved because Athena helps you to better define what you're looking for. And then that reduces, as humans take that process over, that reduces the opportunity for bias to come in because you have that objective standard.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating too, because, as you've described, a lot of these people are trying to figure out what that job is during the interview. And that's kind of wild to consider, but it's very true in some of the job interviews that I've been a part of and then seen tangentially. But and I think your tool is going to be really fascinating for future things, as that initial definition of the job, and then as that position evolves over time, as they gain new responsibilities, and you've already got that one base foundational element, and then we can add components to it. And I imagine your AI is helping you add those components in a much more succinct and better format. Is that fair to say?
It's totally fair to say. The speed at which we're pivoting roles. It used to be you would say, okay, here's the job description for a role, and we're going to put somebody in it, and 5 years later they're still doing the same thing. That's not happening today. Businesses are changing and evolving so rapidly. I think the time, I mean, this is anecdotal, and by my gut, I have zero data to back it up, but I think it's likely that the time that you're pivoting roles is probably 18 months or less, where you put somebody into a role and then the context changes and you've got to change it, whether in a major way. And it's not like, you hire somebody to be a web developer and then all of a sudden, they're a senior accountant, right? It's not that kind of change. But the pivoting that goes on within those roles is happening remarkably quickly. And what in the world of yesterday, you would call me in and you'd say, "Hey, Scott, like the business is changing. I need to pivot your job a little bit. Here's what I'm thinking." We'd have a very sort of non-concrete conversation about it, but I'm a good corporate citizen. So I put my hand up and I'm like, "Okay, I'm on board. I'll do it." And I leave and you turn around to update my job description and then something gets in your way and it never happens because there are 50 other things that are more important than updating a document. But the problem is I leave and I don't have 100% clarity. In the world of tomorrow, you're going to go to Athena. You're going to work out what the changes in my job are. You're going to send me the new spec. I'm going to form some opinions about it. I'm going to come in. You and I are going to have a very concrete conversation about it that is going to yield clarity for me. And that clarity is critical because it allows me to work with autonomy. It allows you to operate with confidence and not the need to micromanage. And we still drive the business forward, right? And so tomorrow's world is very different when we shrink the amount of time that it takes to think through the role and then complete the documentation. And the documentation, it's just a record. Who cares whether you have a job description or not? What we need to have is perfect clarity between us about what is going on and what the business need is, how we're going to measure and define that success, and what are the specific and tangible outcomes that need to get produced. I don't want to overtalk it. I don't want to turn it into a TEDx, but let me give you a really, I think, tangible example of what goes on today and what we're trying to change. If we were going to put together, let's say we're going to hire an accountant. Traditionally, like something that most of us would write into a job description for an accountant is follow up on delinquent accounts. But you have to ask yourself why. What's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of that follow-up? Is it because I need to see that person come in and sit at their desk and write a bunch of emails and make a bunch of phone calls to people who don't want to get them? And the answer is no, of course not. Who cares about the effort? It's the outcome that matters. And in this case, the reason you follow up on delinquent accounts is a number called days outstanding. It's a measure of efficiency that relates to how quickly the organization can collect on revenue that it's due. But why do we stop? Why do we say your job is to follow up on delinquent accounts, the task, the activity, rather than saying days outstanding is critical to our bottom line? Your job is reducing days outstanding. Why do we not say that? Because the outcome, it changes everything. First of all, if you tell me my job is to make phone calls, how engaging is that? If you tell me days outstanding, massively important business, that's your job. Now I just became a part of something really meaningful. That raises my engagement. Second thing is it opens the door to innovation because I come back to you and I say, wait a minute, if days outstanding and bringing that number down is my job, then shouldn't I be doing these things too? And you're like, duh, like I didn't even see those. I'm not on the front line. But yes, do those things, right? So now you've put me in a situation where I've become an owner. I've become an innovator. I feel more engaged. And we know from a study done by Towers Watson, fully engaged employees tend to produce 16% more than we pay them.
So one of the things that we frequently get or that we see is when people ask about a new AI tool is they're like, well, couldn't you just ask ChatGPT to do that? Now, Warren and I know, and we talk frequently, like, no, it's the base level underlying expertise that has a big impact. But explain how what the web app that you've created and the tool in its entirety is superior to just using ChatGPT and being like, I want you to have a results-oriented job description. You know what I mean? Like, why is this superior? What training has gone into it?
Super question. So there are a handful of different reasons that a generic LLM can't produce the same kind of output. Here's the first one. The way that a generic LLM like ChatGPT works is it has a training database. And its training database is basically the internet. It's everything that's out there. Now, the word job description, if I say, I want you to write me a job description, right? The only way that ChatGPT can understand what that means is by looking at what's commercially available, what's out there on the internet. And there's a bunch ranging from stuff that's decent to a lot of stuff that's really, really bad. What ChatGPT is going to do is a better job, a faster job of what we humans do today, which is go to the internet, find things that we think sound good together, cut and paste them together, mash it all into one and output it, right? If you don't care about what you're doing, if all you need is a bunch of bullets on a page that you can call a job description to quickly post, then you're probably right. ChatGPT is a better tool for you. It's free and it's going to be faster. But it's not going to lead you. And that's the principal difference. So the first problem is the training database is full of garbage and it's not filtered out. We do that. The second thing is that you have to lead ChatGPT. You have to know exactly what to ask it for, exactly how to ask it, and exactly what to do with what you get back. You don't have to do that with our product. Our product leads you. The third thing is we're built for an enterprise play. And it would be, I've used ChatGPT for these purposes. I can tell you it would quadruple the amount of work involved if what we were trying to do was use it at enterprise scale. Plus, there would be a tremendous variety based on how people were asking for the information with what you got back. We change all of that. Athena helps preserve the tone and voice of the industry, the tone and voice of your organization, the logo and branding, the things that you want as sort of consistent, reusable assets, the description of your company, the commitments you make to diversity, equity, inclusion, if those are important to you, right? All of those things are preserved. So from the standpoint of scale, ChatGPT can't do it. From the standpoint of consistency and voice, ChatGPT can't do it. From the standpoint of, the average user knowing how to ask, you're not going to get the same output. And that's why we built the tool. We started with frameworks from top recruiters, top HR professionals, and then we used those frameworks and built an AI core inside of them. So Athena actually leads you through a process very much like a human being would, and then takes your inputs like a human being would and batches them and processes them in batches or in groups, and then allows you to give feedback, which is another thing that becomes more challenging when you're creating all of the various documentation to do with a generic large language model.
Yeah, I like what you said there. It's a curated experience, what you've done with Propulsion AI, where as you explained, ChatGPT is grabbing everything, and that is a spectrum of good and bad. And so, again, it comes back down to what Jacob and I have talked with many people about, is that the expertise that we humans bring to the equation here. You and your team, you looked at it and said, okay, well, this content on the web is garbage, but this content from our experts is good. Let's use that as our training set, and you have a much better tool. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing in the AI conversation now, is what that curated experience is, and using their own expertise at the end to make those vetting questions, the editing, all the other things that we have to do because we're the experts in that particular field.
I think that's brilliantly said. I love the term curated experience. I want to steal that from you.
But here's for it.
Here's one other
curated experience.
Here's one other thing I hope doesn't get lost in the mix, which is, who cares if you have a job description? That's not I think our legal friends and some very compliance-minded HR people will tell you about the importance of having the documentation, and I don't dispute it. But the most important thing that gets created in the process is clarity in the mind of that manager. Because with that clarity, when I come in as a recruiter and I put a top 10% talent in front of the manager who's thought the role through really deeply, they have a different conversation. Top talent gravitates toward that manager. They want to join the organization because the organization has shown them how they operate. They're thoughtful about how roles fit strategy. That's the most important thing. The documentation is important, but it's of secondary importance to the ability to really understand how to leverage a human asset as a strategic resource within a company.
So while we've been chatting, I went ahead and logged into the tool, which was fun because it automatically pulled up my business and it started asking me important information, which has been really cool. One of the things that Warren and I talk a lot about is, in addition to the expertise, is the need to have a person involved. People have frequently referred to the human in the loop, right? And so some of the things we've seen reports, so I'm a lawyer, some of the things we've seen reports about are people unthinkingly using the output from large language models and not, using their brain in addition to the wonderful tool that is AI. And so your tool does not seem at all like I've heard stories of people applying to jobs at HR and they've installed a new AI tool and then everyone gets rejected because the AI is rejecting everyone for whatever reason or those kinds of issues. Clearly, you're avoiding that kind of thing here. It is very much a curated experience. This is back and forth. It's asking me about my job description. Is this good at a high level? Does this summarize the job correctly? Those kinds of things. And so, what did you have in mind when you were designing this tool in terms of, okay, how do we avoid I want to say like easy errors or just dumb mistakes, like the machine just making thoughtless decisions?
You've summarized it, I think, really, really well. The experience we were trying to create was very much a human-like experience. The same way that a human would ask you questions, would take inputs and process those inputs, would give you some output back and test it with you, would let you give feedback, and then would take your feedback and work with it. The biggest obstacle that we wanted to get past was that HR people and recruiters are not the experts in the job. So whatever we created needed to be something that facilitated that manager's direct involvement because they're the expert. They're the one who's going to manage the role. They're the one who's going to ultimately make the decision about who gets hired and who doesn't. So
Amen
clarity
to that.
so critically important. So we wanted to be able to we're not trying to eliminate the HR people, but we're trying to place their cycles where they are most valuable. And that's with because tech is not, and I think this goes a little bit to what you were alluding to, tech is not doing a great job right now of the candidate interaction. We still need humans to do that. But to do that, those humans need bandwidth. So we want to get them out of this aspect of the cycle, of the life cycle, and apply that bandwidth where it really matters that we have humans involved. Meanwhile, the manager has an impactful and involved interaction with this technology platform. Now, our customers tell us that when humans are involved, it takes them 4 to 6 hours of effort. The Society for Human Resource Management's estimate is 5 to 8 hours of effort. We've gotten that down to as little as 15 minutes. The output is better and it's faster. And in part, it's because Athena is digital. If I run this same process that Athena runs as a human, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to probably spend an hour pulling details out of your head and trying to understand what you really think is important. Now, there's an opportunity for drop balls between us. I'm not the expert. You are. I'm pulling that clarity out. I'm interpreting it. My bias comes in. I then go away and I have to write something. I come back. I have to test it with you. You're going to give me some feedback. I'm going to go away. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to come back and check it. Then I'm going to go write an ad for the web. Then I'm going to go write social content. That's how we get to that 5 to 8 hours that SHRM estimates it takes a human to be involved. But Athena is doing this all in parallel.
What got you to build this tool? I mean, clearly, we did our research. You've got decades of experience in HR. But what made you say AI is the right tool for this? Because, sometimes it can just be a shiny new thing. And we've seen applications of AI where we're like, well, that's cool, but how usable is that? This is a very usable tool, Scott. So what caused you to move in this direction?
I mean, I think the first factor was that, I've been in C-level HR roles for 20 years. And in the roles, I was a buyer of technology. And the theme that kind of ran throughout that time in all of the different packages that I've purchased is that it always felt like the tech never really got to the root cause of the problem. It always seemed like it was made by people that were adjacent to the problem, but never really practitioners. And I'll give you an example. And I guess, I was going to say, I don't mean to call them out specifically, but I do mean to call them out specifically. Like Workday is a behemoth and they sell a ton of work every year. They sell a bunch of platform product. And I've never met anybody, not a single person that likes Workday, not one. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, right? But I've never talked to one. And I especially don't talk to managers who like it. And I especially don't talk to HR practitioners who like it. So I think I got possessed of this idea that because I'm not a technical guy, at first, I mean, I'm becoming a more technical person. You have to when you're in a startup. But because I understood the problems inside out from having solved them, from leading teams as large as 80 in solving those problems, I felt like I understood the problems well enough that I could build better software. I think that was the first force. The second force is just this, the method that Athena follows is it produces results. I can tell because I've been on the receiving end of candidates coming in and saying the recruiters in organizations that I've led, I've never seen a better prepared company when it comes to hiring. And so we know that the method worked, but it just wasn't scalable with humans for all of the reasons that I just detailed for you, right? It takes too long. It's not the right involvement from the right people. That method was just not going to scale. And then all of a sudden, AI didn't really burst on the scene, right? We're calling large language models have been around for a long time, but they became commercially available at price points that we could leverage and in a scalable sense. And so you bring those two things together, and here we go. And we're starting to see really interesting use cases, not just for hiring, but for pitching headcount internally at budget time, for high potential employees designing their own roles. And I'm happy to, I'll give you details on these if you want to pour into the details. Pivoting roles internally, right? This tool establishes the anchor for everything that comes after it, including talent acquisition, but also talent management, performance management, the entire life cycle.
And this goes back to earlier part of the conversation. I really like what you said about having designed the role with metrics in mind, and giving this allows us to take a different perspective on what work is, and gives the individual autonomy to make decisions. Your example of, make some calls to clear our accounts to get those delinquent bills in. And now you've given them, okay, well, is calling the right method? Is it something else? Do I need to go down there and talk to them personally? Maybe that got shuffled away. Or is it they've forgotten about us? Or, whatever it is that they've got to figure out. And that gives them the autonomy. And Jacob told you he's a lawyer. I'm a creative marketer professional, and I like the autonomy, but then there are certain times I do like some constraints. And I tell everybody this, art is about constraints. When you're looking at a canvas, you're looking at a big square. That's your first constraint. And then you're looking at the medium, the pigments, those are constraints. And then we use them to create something unique. And I think you've done a fantastic job of that with your expertise and your knowledge of this sector. You've been able to parlay all of that into this amazing tool that is going to shape the face of work, I think.
I appreciate that. One of the most impactful things that happens to us is the relationship between the boss and the direct report. In fact, like one of the latest pieces of research that I read suggests that that's the number one driver of employee loyalty. By the way, compensation, number 5 on the list. Number 2 on that list, being involved in something that's meaningful to the business. And so, when I sit down for my weekly one-on-one with my boss, here's how it should go theoretically, right? Scott, how are you doing to the numbers? Like these things, like we understand these are the outcomes you need to produce. We understand these are the targeted results. It's not enough that I have a KPI, by the way. right. Like let's say as a chief people officer, my KPI usually would be at least one of them would have something to do with employee net promoter score. But that's too ambiguous until we say, look, employee net promoter score today is 50, and in 12 months I need it to be 65. Great. So now I have an outcome that I need to produce, a way that I'm going to measure it, and a targeted result. So when I sit down in my one-on-one, my boss can say to me, Scott, how's it going? How's the movement of that number? Where are we between 50 and 65 right now? Second thing my boss can say is, okay, let's talk about how you're showing up and delivering value in the organization. And that relates to competencies and skills. But you have to understand what the competencies and skills are before you as my boss can say to me, hey, Scott, you are doing great on problem solving. You're crushing it on problem solving. You're not doing so good on adaptability. Let's think about how we can help you build that competency. So how am I doing to the numbers? How am I showing up and delivering value at work? Like, what can I do as a boss to help get obstacles out of your way, and what else, right? That's how a great one-on-one should be structured. And obviously that's the high level of it, right? There's a lot more detail below that surface, but theoretically that's what you want. And again, it comes back to, do I understand the design of the role and why the elements that are in that design are important? The more clarity that manager has, the more that conversation around performance management changes. So now, rather than it being a corrective conversation, it's really about growth. LinkedIn did a study that said 94% of employees would stay longer at an organization if they felt like the organization had a growth plan for them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. There's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason. There's a reason I left where I was. So there was no growth.
Yeah, we hear that. So you've got this great tool. It seems to be focused currently on helping you determine those outcomes you want in a position, helping you better tailor. What's the future of Propulsion AI? What do you have planned?
We just launched a product in November of last year.
Oh, wow.
We're gaining
Congrats.
good traction, but we're really, really young. And so as a result, we are laser focused just on this one aspect because we think we have a lot of value to deliver and a lot of users to listen to about how they want value. But as we go, like I said, this is the anchor for everything that follows. So we have a vision for about 6 different products that are all integrated across the talent management lifecycle. And in each of them, we have we think it's a very unique application of artificial intelligence. So the difference between, you go to ChatGPT and you get a list of bullets that we call a job description, or you go to Athena and you have a thoughtful interaction that results in clarity that derives everything in your business, right? That's the kind of difference that this product produces. And we've got about 6 other products that we think we can create that same kind of difference so that we are selecting people more objectively and with a better, faster process, a more accurate process, that we're onboarding them and getting them set up to deliver the results that we built into that job design, and ultimately that we're transforming the process of performance management.
Very cool, Scott. And I appreciate the focus on the single product. While you launched in November, you have a great website, and the platform when I logged in, even more beautiful. So you're doing a good job with this, and also you're very convincing. As somebody who's been hiring recently, you're speaking my language. These are things that I needed to hear, so I appreciate it.
And I believe in this stuff. It changes. If you go to work in a job where you don't fit for whatever reason, you are not living a great life. But if you go, and I know the 3 of us have had similar experiences in this regard. There's such a difference when you go to work and you don't have to pick your words. It just feels normal. And when people give you criticism, it doesn't feel like they're getting down on you personally. It just feels like, this is in service of some greater good that we're all working for. And the way your boss leads is the way you need to be led. We've had those experiences, and the 3 of us have probably had just the opposite of those experiences too. And that matters. Go to work in a place where you fit, it contributes something meaningful and valuable to your life. And if you go to a job where you don't fit, it really takes something away. And that's why I believe this so passionately, because that's the real mission we have. We want people to fit in at work. And I don't mean fit in like you've got to bend and adapt. We just want people to work where they fit, where they feel good. They go home at the end of the day and they feel like they've done something with real meaning.
On the kind of fun side, I really appreciate that you named your entity Athena, the goddess of wisdom. I think that is fantastic.
Correct.
That you put that kind of level of thought into it. I don't know if that's the case, but it just sounded, as I was thinking about it, it's like, this is the goddess of wisdom. And I wonder if they really keyed into that with this. So,
because the experience that we wanted was somebody who was able to lead you through the process that you would have confidence in, that could bring wisdom into the equation, keep you from making mistakes, unlock the secret sauce that's in your head. That's what we were after. So, and it was 100% thoughtful. And thank you so much for identifying that.
That's fun. Scott, if we want people listening to this to follow you, support you, what should they do? What should they know? Where should they go?
So I think that the first thing is, if you go to the website, we're very convinced that if we build great product, we don't have to really invest a lot in selling that product. People will recognize the value it has, and they will want to include that in what they're doing in their organization. So you can try the product for free. There's no credit card required up front. All you have to do is go to the website, which is getpropulsion.ai, HTTPS getpropulsion.ai. And there's a try it free button. You can get in, just add a username and a password. You are in. 100% full feature. We're really committed to keeping the barriers really low. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I'm not a consultant and we don't do consulting work, but these are hard subjects. And if you need advice, or if you want help, or if you want an alternate point of view, I'm a pay it forward kind of guy. Connect with me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/M.Scott.M is my profile. You can also find me Propulsion AI through LinkedIn.
Great. Yeah. And we will include those links in the description of this video. So if you're watching this video, go ahead and take a look. We'll make sure that you can get in touch with Scott. We found this really valuable. I know I learned a lot. And by playing with the tool during the interview, I can tell you that it does match the product matches what everything that Scott has said. And it has been a thoughtful conversation both here and on the computer in real time, which is really kind of fun. Thanks everybody for watching this episode together on Tingenuity AI. We hope that you've enjoyed listening to Scott Morris. I, for one, learned a lot about HR and about artificial intelligence and how you can use it intelligently in your daily life and in your work. So we want everyone to like and subscribe. Be sure to follow us and follow Scott. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Such a pleasure to have been here.